CMMS Radio talks about all things CMMS, computerized maintenance management software, focused on maintenance management. It's the people, the process, and the culture that make your CMMS journey a success. All right, welcome back to Friends of Nano, presented by CMMS Radio. I'm doing this in concert with Nano Precise, and we're here at SMRP 33. It's 2025, Fort Worth, Texas. We're right down the road from Big D. That's Dallas, if you didn't know. I am here with Jennifer Zach. That is MentorAPM Asset Management, and they jumped in on this special production not only to support CMMS Radio, but to enter the nanosphere. That's what I call it when you're going to potentially work with and help the clients of Nano Precise and do cool stuff with Kevin Clark and the team. So Jennifer, welcome to CMMS Radio, but this is really Friends of Nano, and welcome to your first ever SMRP.
Thank you. It's been so exciting to be here. SMRP is something, an event that we've been familiar with for well over a decade, and just really exciting to be here.
Yeah, and I have to tell you, I was cruising around. I haven't had much time to walk the floor like I usually do at a conference and get booth visits. I'm like, oh man, I don't have my correspondent. Other things came up, but I was cruising by your booth. You had a lot of activity at the booth for this conference, and before you got over here to record, we were talking a little bit about how that was something you were not only pleasantly surprised by, but it was so much traffic at the booth and so many real conversations. You almost seemed kind of shocked. Can you tell me a little bit about that and maybe some of the questions or things that people are struggling with?
Sure. So I think, the solution that has been gaining the most interest and excitement here at SMRP is our MentorLens, which is our point solution. So we're a complete enterprise asset management platform, but we have some point solutions to go out and help you do specific tasks related to asset management. And MentorLens is all about getting out in the field and capturing, creating digital records of your assets and completing condition assessments just by taking pictures. And there's been a lot of excitement about that. I think the other thing that we're just really appreciating here at SMRP is the people that we're talking to, because of their focus on reliability and maintenance, they very quickly see the value we bring in our platform.
It's not as much of you kind of, I don't want to say skip, but there's some of it that you don't have to do. You can kind of jump in sooner because they're already paying attention to those focus areas where you really want to have clients and potential clients able to kind of dial in their programs from a maintenance perspective to achieve better reliability, which they're two different things. And by the way, thanks for these cool MentorLens sunglasses.
Oh, you're so welcome.
Yeah, I'll bring those home and those will get stolen right away by my better half. And that's okay. That's okay. So when it comes to this conference, and I've been told this one's bigger than what it normally is, probably because Orlando, they had to change it because of the inclement weather, but it might be because we're in Texas. Is there anything that you've seen here or heard here or people that you've met that are like new, or was it more like you got to see some old friends you've seen around and maybe even meet some people that you've never been able to actually shake their hand in person?
Absolutely, both and, I'm going to say. One, so great to catch up with old friends like Tammy and Jeff over at People and Processes, catching up with George and Paul at Reliability X.
Yeah.
These are guys that we know from former days, and it's just been so good to see them in person. And then to be able to meet people like you, where we have a thriving LinkedIn relationship and we've met online and recorded together, but never had the chance to shake hands in person. So that's been really great. And then just understanding more of the maintenance and reliability universe. We are typically focused on events around our customer base. SMRP is different in that it's a subject matter focus conference versus a sector conference. And so, and that, directly relates to the different kinds of conversations we're having here.
Oh yeah, and you mentioned George and Paul, and I want to also shout out Joe and AJ, also Dan. Uh, they provided the setup for me.
Yeah,
George
great.
literally drove it down from Pennsylvania. I mean, how solid is that? And those are some of my favorite people on the planet. And I'm so happy to finally meet you in person. And of course, shake Tacoma's hand. And he's been so busy, it's crazy. Plus, he gave a talk or is
Yeah.
giving a talk. I don't remember which it is because I'm losing sight of time. Do
Yeah,
you
he's on the agenda twice. So this morning he gave the ISO 55000 focused session with John Helwig from CDM Smith. And tomorrow he's going to be presenting on the framework for asset management from unlocking value across the life cycle.
Nice. Which is really, in a lot of ways, what everybody's trying to do at some point or another. They might be early in their journey. And that's another thing I wanted to ask you about, because a conference like this, and I've been talking to a lot of people because it's my first time. I'm not a reliability professional. I'm more of a kind of, I want to create a forum for people to come and bring their expertise so I can kind of showcase it, and I'll learn along the way, but I don't want to be a pretend expert. I want to be a voice for the industry and make everybody better. But there's people that are newer to the industry that might be here to learn some of the basics. And then there's other people that are not as new, but they're trying to turn that corner and get to these more, what I might call, pinnacle levels. And that might even include kind of like what we're doing with Friends of Nano, where maybe they're leveraging your platform and now they want to bring some other things in, like what comes from Nano Precise or something else, or they want to get more dialed in. I want to bring up a subject we've talked about in the past, and it was yourself as well as Tacoma. And we were talking about this concept where often people think when they get their platform, so they're going to get MentorAPM asset management, and they're like, oh, we got to set up every asset and we got to do all this stuff and then we can use the system. But there's a different perspective we've discussed in the past, and I want to bring it up again. That is, what you really need to start looking at is kind of a combination of your criticality and your risk, and focus on those primarily critical assets that create the most risk. I think you've tried to teach me that criticality contributes to risk. And say, for example, it's 30%, it might be 40 or 20 or whatever. And then they can put 80+% of their effort on those assets to, once it's set up and they're doing the right practices, they can really get somewhere. Can you talk a little bit about that, but maybe in better terms that you know?
Sure. A couple of things I'll just pull from that because you gave some really good descriptions. One thing is that just buying software doesn't mean you're going to be successful in your asset management and maintenance program. Software is a tool that has to be there to support the processes and culture you are creating and prioritizing in your organization. The second thing was that idea of we've got to get everything in and ready to then be focused on everything. And what you were driving at there is the notion that not everything in your plant is critical or deserving of loads of attention. The idea of criticality is understanding what are the most essential systems and assets that can turn you upside down. And when you are able to identify those critical assets, then you can dive deeper into understanding risk and how they might be putting you at risk, and what kinds of asset strategies and interventions you can apply to mitigate that risk and direct and focus your strategies. I don't know if it's 20%. I don't know if it's 80%. When you are, pretty much in any organization, but our primary market that we've worked with is municipal water and wastewater utilities. And in organizations like that, there's always a big disconnect between the requirements that they have and the resources they have to do it. And so we say it this way, you might have $100 of need and $10 to spend. where are you going to spend that $10 to most effectively protect your level of service or your production, whatever it is that your output and outcomes are. And so at the heart of our system is the focus and framework for risk and criticality assessment that helps you start to know where you need to pay attention.
So I keep thinking about this idea that, so you already talked about how, it's a tool, and in and of itself, it's not going to solve your problems if you don't have the right culture, the fundamentals, the things that we constantly talk about year over year. And we're going to keep doing that because that's where it starts. And that's the one thing that has to stay consistent. And then these tools can come into play to further enhance, augment, amplify, organize, and create good data visibility on the back end for you to make better decisions and understand what's really happening in your plant, in your facility, at your wastewater treatment plant or facility. Sometimes they're called one or the other. And I keep thinking about the early stages of seeking out a solution and how customers can sometimes, they don't necessarily realize it, jump the gun and not have much of a plan and a strategy. And you also can help with that. Is that not the case where you can help them maybe assess where they're at on maybe their maintenance management journey, whether they're really ready for this technology, instead of just focusing on let's get another sale, but more so let's get something in place that's actually going to thrive and succeed for a long time?
Yeah, we really like to be tightly engaged with our customers to understand, where they're at today, what their ambitions and objectives are, and make sure that as we deploy the software, we're not deploying it in a vacuum, but with support. And so that support can take form in a few different ways. It can be some training. We offer some asset management 101 training that many of our customers have taken advantage of across their entire org to say, hey, everybody's got a role in this. It's not just the maintenance department. And as we're doing these things, we want everyone to understand what it is that we're trying to achieve here. And so training, we can engage in different kinds of, a gap analysis or a more specific scope of assistance. And then there's also, in some cases with some clients, they really need manpower. And so we work with some trusted partners in the space to bring in some extra expertise and bodies to help with the tasks on hand.
I love that, because what that means is you're not just providing or selling software, you're bringing a comprehensive deliverable with added resources for comprehensive solutions. And I know a lot of organizations and people that do different types of work in this awesome industry that we all love, not just because we can earn, but because we can solve problems, we can make great connections to further solve problems and do great stuff. This is all connected to our lives anyway, in some way, shape, or form. And I think that is another way that you add value, bring value, and you help them, in a sense, supplement, because those resources, the clog, the bottleneck of lack of resources seems to be ever present now more than ever. So very briefly, I want, and quick shout out, don't move, stay looking here, but quick shout out to Rob Yeager, because he's running around and he just snuck by us and he's snapping all these pictures. So I want him to get some love on the podcast. So if you hear this, Rob, thanks for doing all that cool work, man, because he's been cruising around, man. That guy covers a lot of ground, and I know he's on your team. But getting back to this idea and this concept of the skilled trades, and how we have a gap that feels like we're getting a kind of turning the corner on a resurgence of people being interested in the trades, being interested in things like manufacturing and even the technologies that go along with it. I think that's something that we're all still worried about, and we want to keep talking about it. Have you seen or noticed anything, whether it's in your local town, at the conferences you go to, or the people that you talk to all the time, where they're seeing and feeling the same thing? Because I feel like it's starting to become a little bit more common that younger generations want to get in on the trades. They're a bit less interested in college. And I'm not saying, if you want to be a lawyer, go to college, but what are you hearing about that at this conference, other conferences in your local area, anything? Just what's your perspective?
Sure. Workforce is a huge topic in the water and wastewater space, which is where I'm most familiar. There is the conversation, I'm sure it's in other sectors too, is about the coming silver tsunami, and just a massive retirement of skilled workers and trades without the backfill of younger generations coming in. And so there's an ongoing conversation about how to raise awareness of the opportunity to come be a water and wastewater operator, or to in the good jobs, solid salaries that are available. There's also a lot of talk about how do we preserve this institutional knowledge that is going to be retiring out the door. And that's something a solution like ours can help with, that documentation, getting out of Frank's head everything that he knows about the plant and nobody else knows, and getting that documented and recorded and then accessible to the new workforce coming in. I just wrote a column actually recently that was published in Opflow magazine about strategies for that knowledge transfer, in ways that, when you're bringing in digital technologies, there can be some resistance on the part of the older generations. I've always done it this way. I'm perfectly happy with my clipboard. Don't tell me to do it a different way. And younger generations, the digital natives, I think they're calling them, who were practically born with an iPhone in their hand and don't know how to function without it. And they come into a manufacturing or a process environment and go, why am I not able to use tools like I use in the other part of my life? And so that digital transformation, that digital transition sets up actually a really neat opportunity for the knowledge transfer, in that the older generation can mentor and share their knowledge with the younger generation, and the younger generation can also be a resource for teaching how to use these digital tools and how to get value out of them. So that was a neat piece to write.
I like that, and I want people to check that out, because I'm envisioning this idea that just pretend, right? I'm not really, but pretend I'm one of those guys, or it could be a gal, cowboys, cowgirls that get stuff done. They know all the things about this particular facility. And now we got somebody new that's in there, and they're all about these phones, the digital stuff, and having resources. They know how to self-help. They can do stuff with one hand, and we're over here pounding with our thumbs and index fingers like an ogre on a phone. And they could do this kind of shadowing. They have these great conversations. I could point and say, you see this over here, and if you look on the backside here, and then you look at this indication on this, say, for example, compression dial, and then that person's taking it in and going, yeah, I would just do like this and this, and you get that kind of convergence. And it's not to say we want full conversion. What we want is full collaboration, so that that knowledge transfer can happen. And it can happen in so many different ways: documenting it in the system, having these great conversations, whether they're in the lunchroom or on the plant floor or out there. Maybe they're, I forget what it's called when you're near the water entry on the wastewater plant. Like, we've got one in my town where you can see it flowing, and it's where all the pumps and the systems are that the water runs through. If they're out there, they could be having a conversation, and all those things add up to preserving some of that tribal knowledge, so it doesn't really go away. Because if we lose that, if we really lose that, it's going to be a problem, because still right now, it's kind of early and all that. When you go to the AIs and the Googles and all that, you don't know if you're getting the right information or not. And if we took 100 or 1,000 wastewater treatment plants, there'd be similarities, but then nuanced difference, just like in CMMS, EAM, APM, blah, 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 blah. So I think that's great. I want people to go and check out that article. Could you tell me one more time the name of the publication?
It was in OpFlow magazine. It's if you go to our website under our resources page, you'll find a link to it.
Excellent. So everybody go and check that out. Well, Jennifer Zach, I want to thank you for joining me here while we're at the conference. I'm glad you had your first SMRP experience, and I hope we get to see you. I found out that it's going to be in Raleigh, North Carolina in 2026, so I hope we get to do this again. I want to thank you and MentorAPM Asset Management for supporting this production and being such great supporters of CMMS Radio and the efforts that I kind of put forth to lift up the industry. I call stuff out pretty hard and real, but I'm trying to make a difference for everyone. And thank you for being here with me on Friends of Nano. That's Nano Precise, folks. Presented by CMMS Radio at SMRP for SMRP 2025.
My privilege. Thank you.
Did you find this episode helpful? Please send us some feedback, suggest a topic, or ask a question. Reach out to CMMS Radio if you need a co-pilot on your CMMS project. Visit CMMSradio.com and use the What's on Your Mind link. Thank you for tuning in to CMMS Radio, your resource for all things CMMS, from selection to implementation, to help you make better choices, learn from industry experts, and have a successful CMMS journey.